This is going to be the first video of 3 that deal with graphing the transformation of inverse trig functions. So we're going to jump right into one that's got everything going on. So I'm going to lead you through my thought process and hope that that helps you know what's going on. So first of all, I don't really have the inverse of sine memorized. What I do have memorized is I have sine, the graph of sine, and I know that I want to restrict sine so that I get every y to happen but only one time. So I'm going to take the graph here. That's just a little piece. If you remember, sine would keep going this way. But I'm going to restrict it from negative pi over 2. That's got a y value of negative 1. There's 0, 0, and this is pi over 2, 1. So I can't help but have sine memorized. And then once I have sine memorized, then I can come along and find the inverse of sine. And so I switch my x and my y's. So now I'm at negative 1, negative pi over 2. I'm still at 0, 0. And I'm at 1, pi over 2. And my concavity has switched. So this is concave up, and this is concave down. And so this is the parent function for the inverse of sine. Okay, so just like we did trig transformations, the original functions, what we did is I like to do the stretches first and then the shifts. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to graph 3 inverse sine of 1/2 x. Okay, so I'm doing the stretches. Notice this is going to pull everything vertically. So what had been at 1 is now going to get up to 3. And this is going to stretch everything horizontally. So it's sometimes we say a horizontal compression of 1/2, but a horizontal compression of 1/2 is a horizontal stretch by a factor of 2. Okay, so what happens here, my scale may not stay the same, but I'm going to label everything. I still have 0, 0, and now I'm pulling things out, so I'm now going to come out to pi instead of pi over 2, and I'm now going to come up to 3. Okay, so this is going to be that point here, and then likewise I have a negative, this one is getting pulled to become negative pi, and then how far is that? Okay, somewhere down here is negative 3, and I have this point roughly. Whatever, scale may not be exact, but there we go. Something like that. Okay, so now I have done the stretches. Notice this pulled it was a vertical stretch by a factor of 3, a horizontal stretch by a factor of 2. And now that I have that, now I can do the shifts. So this is going to move it, this right here is going to move it left 1, and this is going to move it down, down pi over 2. So, or moving it, whatever, however you want to say that. Okay, so, oh, I'm so wrong. Yeah, so sorry. Let's try this again. It's a vertical stretch by a factor of 3, which means, oh, goodness gracious. Okay, start at 3 minutes in. This is going to change. This is now the value 3. This is now the value negative 3. So sorry, because I'm pulling, I lied. You know, I was hoping for a snow day today. I didn't get it. Okay, this is going to get pulled by a factor of 2. So this is now the point 2. This is now negative 2. This gets multiplied by a factor of 3, but this was up here. It was 3. It was pi over 2. So this becomes 3 pi over 2. And this is negative 3 pi over 2. I am really sorry about that. Sorry for any confusion. I was still graphing the original sine graph. Okay, but now we're here. Okay. Now we can do our shifts. Okay, so we're going to shift it to the, and do you know, I caught my mistake when I realized I set this up so that it would be nice, pretty, and these numbers would be, like I'm moving it to the left 1, so I don't have to have like pi minus 1 or whatever. And then I realized, wait, these aren't, anyway, that was how I caught my mistake. So let's graph that whole thing. I'm sorry, this is not my best video, but I'm overworked and underpaid, and I'm not going to make another one. So here's the new graph that we're going to do. So everything, we're going to look at these points here, and now we're going to shift to the left 1 and down pi over 2. So what had been at negative 2 is now at negative 3. What had been at positive 2 is now at positive, this is positive 1, this is negative 3. Here's a I lied, a negative 1. Okay, and then I was at 3 pi over 2, but now I have to shift this down. So shifting that down, this is pi, because 3 pi over 2 minus pi over 2 is 2 pi over 2, which is 1 pi. And then I need to come, so this, somewhere down here, trying to keep a similar scale. This would be negative pi. This would be negative 2 pi. Oop, way down there. Okay, so I have the point, the negative 2, negative, okay, so I have the point negative 3, negative pi over 2. I have the point, what had been 0, 0, now has to shift to go into negative 1, and then it has to go down pi over 2, which is, this is negative pi over 2. So now I have a point here. And then I have a point, this one had gone to the left 1, and then it was at 3 pi over 2, it has to go down to pi. So we're right here. My scale has gotten funny, and we're doing something like this. Sorry, I'll try to make the next video better.